taking all passengers, please make sure they've got all their personal belongings with them before leaving the bus. Thank you.
Oh, there it is. Always a bit worried it won't turn up. Oh, and there's that clock. I saw it on Google Earth a couple of months ago when I was trying to work out a route. I don't know what it's called. Time on legs. There's going to be quite a bit of time on ferries as well, because I'm actually heading for Shetland, where I've never been, the Orkneys, and Lewis, where I haven't been either, and then back here to Glasgow. But it's about 150 miles up to Aberdeen, so I won't be getting seasick yet. Feels good setting out from a big city centre. It's transitional. Flurry of rucksacks here in the suburbs. It's the start of the West Highland Way. I always think it's a bit odd that we link far-flung and pretty small places together with a brilliant system of footpaths, but not our major cities. I mean, you can do it by linking up paths, as I'm doing between Glasgow and Aberdeen, but it just seems odd that footpaths don't go to people. People have to go to the footpaths. Oh, it absolutely chucked it down last night. Everything's pretty damp. Oh, God, midges. Put the repellent away. Be okay once I get going. I suppose this is the nearest I ever get to being a hunter-gatherer. Except I don't hunt or gather. So it's not so much a survivalist living off the land fantasy about how we once fed. It's more opening up to how we once felt. It takes a while to get there, though, so it won't be today. The outer edges of Glasgow's jogging zone now, heading towards the Campsie Fells, there in the distance. God, it's humid. Not usually a problem in Scotland. Anyway, behind me is a distance that I've come, which is always a nice feeling to have actually, to be able to look back and actually see you've covered something. This being day 2. Tarmac well behind me now, and sheep track giving way to no track. Rocks ahead. Looks like successive flows of basalt. Quite a bit of it in central Scotland. We're here, Glasgow, Edinburgh and Loch Lomond. Stirling a day or two ahead. More basalt hills beyond that. The Highlands to the north, southern uplands to the south. A few hundred million years ago they separated slightly and the central area sank, which is why the lowlands are low. Or at least relatively low. Basalt cliffs just to the north there, and this is Earl's Seat, about 1,800 feet above sea level. So I don't know if it's just getting old, but I do find that on a walk in Britain my head spends about 90% of its time wallowing in the past, my own, the Earth's, and even the next towns, which, when the fog clears, I hope should be Stirling. Stirling Castle actually covers what was, in the Middle Ages, the lowest crossing point of the River Forth. So it's a mightily strategic spot. Robert the Bruce. Always get him muddled up with William Wallace, whose monument is up on the crag over there. Same war, for which I'm beginning to feel guiltily English, so before I leave Stirling I shall atone with a large Scottish. Steep start. Gonna be a hot day. Be hotter for them. Entire wind farm behind me and not a single turbine moving. But wind farms apart, the heather zone's generally pretty empty. Tend to see anyone coming from a long way away. And the other good thing is it's almost always legal to be here, which means you can walk in just about any direction you want. But that's the world going about its business down there. So I better put the old Pinkos back on. The Scottish Land Reform Act actually does assume a fairly general right of access to the to the countryside, but it follows this with a common sense list of exclusions. Golf courses being one of them. You obviously can't walk through standing crops either, but the field margins, the head rigs and the end rigs, they're okay. I don't think grazing rights are included though. I think the outline of the pack's confused him. He doesn't know what I am. That buzzard's got a good view. Ben Honzie on the skyline, and the town of Crieff behind the dust cloud. The old red sandstone which gives the soil its colour, leaving in just about the same way that it got here. Blown across a desert about 400 million years ago. The boundary between the lowlands and the highlands is actually quite sharp. But the one between managing your walking day well and managing it badly is extremely fuzzy. But Warmstone's cool stream, not a very hard decision. When I said I don't hunt or gather, I just suddenly realised that I completely forgot about water. Because once the agricultural zone's fallen away, I gather it all the time. Bit hemmed in by mist this morning. But the corridor of a journey is pretty restricted, even at the best of times, I suppose. So, some days, you hear more than you see. Where's that biker? Can't see him. Probably heading up and over to Braemar in the valley of the Dee. I'm heading for the Dee myself, but via the tail end of the Eastern Highlands. I used to pick these up and send them back for my nephews and nieces, but they're all grown up now, so I might just keep this one for myself. Anyway, there should be 2 more treats just over this hill. One's that bothy, which means I won't have to set off tomorrow with a rucksack full of wet tent. And the other's Mount Keen, which, if I can see it tomorrow, means I won't have to keep fiddling around with a compass. Oh, great. Always handy to have something to steer by. I'm not sure I'll have it for long, though. Oh, never mind. As long as I don't interrupt and I just let the compass get on with it, I should be down on the flat and on my way into Aberdeen about this time tomorrow. One of these days, I'm going to get a psychiatrist to tell me why I don't just hop on a bus. Trouble is, one bus journey would lead to another. The boat should be a bit of a holiday now. It takes about 12 hours to get up to Norwich. So I should be dry by then. Oh, there's a longship over there. I live in Hastings in East Sussex, so Shetland's actually quite far-flung for me. Hazy sort of mishmash of Vikings and knitwear, mostly. Lerwick Town Hall up there on the hill. But wherever a new place happens to be, it imposes its realities pretty fast. Well, the idea is to walk from, let's say, this WC here, where we are now, up through the island of Mainland, over to Yell, and then Unst, most northerly WC up here, and then down to Fetla, the island of Fetla, and then taking a ferry to the Outskerries, which are here, and then back to the WC complex here at Lerwick, and then down to the Orkney's unknown facilities. While I'm courageously facing gale from this bunkhouse. Hope to set off in better weather tomorrow. Bit spooky, but I think that's an RSPB webcam. I mean, if you're a seabird out fishing all day, Shetland must be quite a relief. I suppose it is for the oil industry too, so the main airport can get pretty busy, and you have to wait your turn to get across the runway. Being so windy, Shetland's pretty hard on the body, but on the other hand, it's very, very easy on the eye. No wind farms yet, partly due to concerns about the effects on bird life. I think that's a peregrine. And these are great skuas. About half the world's population of great skuas breeds on Shetland. Pretty aggressive, very territorial. Nests on moorland rather than cliffs. Who eggs? Better keep my eyes peeled so I don't tread on any. But I don't suppose mining peat on this sort of scale does them much good either. Red-throated diver. Saw me before I saw it. What little inland Shetland has looks pretty much like the rest of upland Britain, except that being so far north, the moorland comes down a lot lower. Scotland as a whole actually sits on what were 5 separate pieces of the Earth's crust. 3 of them extend up here to Shetland, and one of Scotland's best known cracks, the Great Glen Fault System, actually runs straight up this bay. I'm going to run up with it and get some breakfast in Scalloway. God, that's not weather. Looks as if someone's left a hoover on. I'm being bashed in the face by my strap. The eyebrows kind of descend. About 10 sheep per human up here. Those two look a bit outnumbered. But far and away, the biggest contribution to the local economy, even more than oil and gas, is fish farming. Although old salmon pens don't make quite such good windbreaks as abandoned crofts. Tanker loading up at the oil terminal. Midsummer's day. That's Ronus Hill, Shetland's highest point. But even down here in the shelter of Sullom Voe, it's blowing half a gale. So I'm cutting my losses and heading for Yell, where I think there's a bunkhouse. A pit stop up here is pretty much like a break between rounds in a boxing match. You're not necessarily all that tired, but you're really glad that all the rattling and the flapping stopped, at least for a while. Oh well. Seconds out. Just one more island to go now between here and the North Pole, and that's Unst. Way over there, I got to walk to the ferry. This one must have arrived a bit earlier. But for a longship this size, the crossing from Norway couldn't have been more than a day or two, so Unst must have been a pretty handy stopover. The sort of Dubai of its day. Except up here we're more or less level with Greenland and polar bears, whereas Unst's top predator is smaller. They were introduced in the late 1800s, and this time of year their toughest decision is whether to have skewer for lunch or snipe. But some meals are much harder to get at. It's a bit misty, and from a distance I thought this was just whitish coloured rock. But it's actually an enormous colony of gannets. These are juveniles, haven't quite got their flight certificates yet. And a couple of skewers on the lookout. The hedgehogs eat the skewers' chicks and eggs, and the skewers do the same to the gannets. Welcome to the northernmost point of the UK. Only Muckle Flugger and Out Stack stand between here and the North Pole. Cool. I think that's the ferry for the morning. 11:10. I wonder when the flight... Oh, right, it's 6:15. No waiting room, though. Spent last night on Fetlar, the island of Fetlar. Then back down here to the bottom of Yell. Early boat over to mainland tomorrow. And then another one to the Out Skerries. Land ho? Not an awful lot of it. Sort of mini archipelago, surrounding a perfect natural harbour. 3 main islands, 2 of them inhabited, joined by that bridge, and together about twice the size of Hyde Park. I've just been shopping, and I want to leave the stuff down here and not have to trail it all the way back to the tent. So I'm looking for somewhere to leave my shopping bag while I wander off over the other half of the Skerries. When the fish factory shut, half a dozen families left. The school was mothballed, and there weren't enough people to form a volunteer fire crew at the airstrip, so no more flights. And the resident population today is down to about 30. But there's a cinema.
Good evening. Welcome to Schoolhouse Cinema. Really nice to see you. Please have your cinema tickets, sir.
Thank you.
Popcorn.
Thank you very much.
The reason they've got all odd numbers, because when I bought these from the Old Union Cinema in Manchester, they had 3,000 to get rid of. I bought 20. It took me 3 days in total to pick up my stuff, so I first travelled down from Aberdeen all the way down to Hull, and I went to pick up a hot tub. Good evening, you may recognise me. We have a mirror pitch on the wall, only bought it a few days ago. It plays the music of the beach, and the waves will actually move. Well, there we are. A souvenir, sir, a souvenir.
Thank you very much indeed. This is the last bit of road coming back into Lerwick. There should be a bunch of eider duck chicks bobbing up and down here somewhere as well. Ducks don't actually feed their young, so the ducklings head off pretty soon after they've hatched, leaving behind these super luxury nests, which, in the eider duck's case, are mostly harvested in Iceland these days and turned into an amazingly comfortable night's sleep. Tender heading ashore from that cruise ship. Must be cruise ship day, there's another one over there. Anyway, I need to find somewhere for the night myself. Could I have some change for the washing machine, please?
Yeah. Can I take a photo?
I've run out of clean clothes, so hence the bedding.
Yeah.
I need to go and use the laundry. I also need to find something for my old mum. It's her birthday next week, and I'm catching a boat down to Orkney this afternoon. Won't be home for at least another month. So, some small standby thing. No. She's 98. Just had a brainwave and went to the onboard shop and got this. It's 10:30 now, so I'll post it off in the morning. Then I'm heading over to the island of Hoy and a ferry back to the Scottish mainland from Stromness. Meanwhile, it looks as if we're heading over to the pier on the right. Industrial estate dead ahead. So, tent-wise, things aren't looking great. I slept in this place last night. Bit derelict. Maybe just a 2 on TripAdvisor. You can already tell that Orkney is very different from Shetland just by the vegetation here. Much greener and also a great deal redder. Same Norse heritage though. The Bible here is in Norwegian. Jesus prophesying the destruction of the temple. Bit demoralising. Especially if your cathedral's made of old red sandstone. The rest of Orkney is made of it too. But here on Hoy it's stacked up way above agricultural levels, which gives you all the heather and this fabulous coastline. Looks okay for tonight, but I just might work my way round to that hill over there first. Oops, sorry bird. You come across these little ponds in the heather so suddenly, and red-throated divers seem to like them. Oh yeah, that one's got a chick. Anyway, it's embarrassingly obvious I'm intruding, so I'll slide on as quickly as possible to what I hope is going to be a pretty amazing view. There we are. Scarpa Flow, one of the world's great natural harbours. Actually where we interned the German High Seas Fleet till on Midsummer's Day 1919 it scuttled itself and 52 ships went straight to the bottom. Most have been salvaged, but 3 of the last were disposed of on eBay last year. I suppose on one level, all a walk really does is get you from A to B slowly. Lots of fresh air and exercise. And on a physical level, it does give you a great sense of well-being. But at the same time as you're actually crossing the landscape, you're also flicking through its pages. And it's this combination of the constant physical output with a very frequently whimsical input that makes my walking day. And so does discovering there's a bothy right here. Great. Made of the same sandstone as the rest of Hoy, but they're these darker stones down on the beach. Not sandstone, but I don't know what they are. Anyway, maybe I'll find an explanatory plaque in the morning. Looks like a band of lava down there. Could be be where the dark stones on the beach last night came from. The Mother Lode. Probably erupted over the existing sediments and then got buried itself. All about 400 million years ago, though. Whereas the sea stack itself, the Old Man of Hoy, hasn't been there for much more than 2 centuries. Anyway, I've got to get over from Hoy to Stromness this afternoon and then jump on a ferry to the mainland. So I need to get down to sea level myself. One more bit there. Not forgetting to pick up the lens cap when I get down there. The irritating thing is, you look back and you see that just beside the cleft that you've come down, there's a much easier way down through the heather.
Got the Hamilton here.
Looks like the ferry's still there. If that be for you, I wouldn't have made it.
Have a good trip.
Thank you.
Steering. Big hand friends from Lewis.
What's your address? Yes? What's your address?
Bennett Hill Cafe, Hoy.
Thanks, Rob. The boat from the Shetlands came down here and I got off at Kirkwall and then walked to roughly about here, got a ferry down to Longhope, and then I walked up the western coast of Hoy up to the Old Man, which is about here, and then this morning I walked around here and I met Rob Ionides, who very kindly gave me a lift to Stromness, and I'm now on the ferry to Scrabster and then Thurso, and then I'm going to walk across northern Scotland to Allapool to get a ferry to Lewis. I rather like leaving civilization, if you like, behind. We're just coming off the cultivated coastal strip behind Thurso. Last field of oats for a while anyway. And ahead is the rest of Caithness. Same old red sandstone as Orkney, and lots of these large shallow lakes. And that's where I camped last night. I was a bit worried about this little stream, didn't know if I'd get over it or not, but it's an absolute free gift. No tussock grass, and it's not much wetter than the bog either side anyway. Bit unlikely, but there is actually a station behind that hummock. The line itself was built with these huge empty loops inland, quite often the only man-made object in sight. Terminals at Wick and Thurso. We're here. Lochshin, Allapool 4 or 5 days ahead, and the ferry over to Lewis. Sleeping under a solid roof. A lot less hassle than a tent. Bit of a crowd round the door this morning, though. They generally stick pretty close to their mothers and aunts for about 3 years, and then drift off into boys-only groups like this. Definite pecking order, but more or less peaceful until the breeding season starts in September. Anyway, sorry chaps, but if I don't leave now, breakfast will wear off and I'll be hungry again. Well, it's a pretty bleak old day. Sort of raining a bit, but drizzling all the time. I'm headed down to that forestry down there. And when I get into this cold here, I should pick up a track. Picked up another dry night as well. Had to sweep the place out a bit. This is actually a pretty standard pre-First World War estate worker's house. 2 down, central stairway, and plenty of room upstairs. Geez. Baby owl. Barn owl, maybe. Being brought up in amazingly squalid conditions. Actually, I'd better leave it alone, because barn owl's an extremely protected species. Time to go. About halfway to Ullapool now. Bog asphodel in flower. One of the few plants in Britain that uses rain as a pollinating agent. Which is quite sensible of it, really. This is only quite a low hill. 645 metres at the trig point. But from it, you can see almost all the way across Scotland. A couple of oil rigs down there at the head of Cromarty Firth. And only 30 or 40 miles, but treble the annual rainfall away. Those are the hills of Assynt, overlooking the west coast. Just tall enough to poke above the last ice cap, which is why they look like they do. Much bigger country than out on the island, although it wasn't so long ago that this was all trees. Generally by this stage into a walk, 5 or 6 weeks or so, my perceptions have recalibrated anyway, and I'm thinking more or less wholesale by the day and by the week rather than by the hour. Anyway, I'm going to drop down onto that buttress, make my way down to the river and follow it along, and around about this time tomorrow I should be in Ullapool. Great setting. Seems to have 2 different languages as well. Oh, sorry, 3. Actually, I think as far as Gaelic's concerned, I'm heading in the right direction, because there's a massive, great Hebridean Celtic music festival starting here tomorrow. Everywhere's going to be pretty full, so I've got plenty of food, so I think I'll just slide out of town, cross the flat bit, wriggle my way down through the hills, down through Harris, north and south Uist, to Barra, and then over to Oban on the mainland. Oh, it's hard to imagine now, but until about 200 years ago, this landscape would have looked a little bit like a music festival itself, because it's absolutely spattered in old summer sheilings. There would have been children running around all over the place, cows munching away, and as much cheese and butter as possible being produced until everybody packed up and went home sometime around the beginning of August. Agriculture. No, a distant second to tourism, and there could well be fewer sheep and cattle here today than when these stones were first put up. But the burning question for me is whether or not there's a cafe in the visitor centre. Extraordinary skill and determination, brute strength and rollers, tremendous investment in time and effort. But the fact is that for 150 generations or so, nobody really cared. So you walk away feeling pretty buoyed up by the fact that your own era, your own time, values these stones in the various ways that it does. Hope it carries on being welcoming. That's the destination for today. It's not raining and the wind isn't too bad. So apart from the fact I can't see, for Harris, these are really good conditions. These aren't, though. This is break your leg territory. Well, I don't really know what to do. There's another ridge that I'd like to walk along, but if the weather's like this, there's absolutely no point, really. So I'm doing a low-level loop back into Lewis till this front's blown through. Fabulous evening. I ought to be a bit more appreciative, but I've been wandering around for the best part of 2 hours in search of a bothy I can't seem to find. Oh, hilarious. Where is it? Oh, I think I've got it. Right there. centre shot. Yeah, I think I think that little square's the window. Doesn't look as if I've got it to myself. Actually, I haven't got it at all. There's some people here. Apparently you have to book. I didn't know that. Just have to push on a bit further. These look old. You can see where they got the idea for the bothy. Nearest settlement would have been on the sea loch down there, I suppose. Lewis this side, Harris the other. The Harris side's managed by a community trust. And it looks as if they've done some rescue work on the building over there. It's probably a fishing hut or a stalking hut. It'll be locked, but there should be a patch of flat grass up there somewhere. It's raining quite heavily outside, too heavily to cook. So for this evening I'm pretty much down to my favourite basics. Oh, hooray. I'll be able to start with a cup of tea. U-shaped valleys, truncated spur. It's like walking into a geography textbook. I mean, you could actually fit the whole of Lewis and Harris inside the M25 with room to spare. So it punches way above its weight, especially down here at the Harris end. But I'm running out of ridge. So I've got to go down. And tomorrow's going to be mostly on roads. Need a cabin map. That's what I'm after. Lewis in yellow, Harris in green, and my meandering route down from Stornoway. The next few islands are in white, all quite small, sort of tail end really, and they're all joined by causeway, except for Barra down at the bottom. Looks as if the ferry's going to hang on for that van before it goes back. The hills of Harris in the far distance now, and I've just come over causeway number 1 to the island of North Uist. Broadly speaking, the Atlantic side of all these islands is just one long white beach. But the other side, the mainland side, is a nightmare. At least it is from a walking point of view. So I'm sticking to the hilly bits and the middle. What's that bird? There he goes. I think it's a merlin. Wow, I've never seen one before. There's 2 of them. Benbecula over there, and South Uist over there, linked since the early 1980s by this delightful gallery of locally sourced Lewisian gneiss. It's the oldest rock in Britain, although it actually used to be part of southeastern Greenland, till a crack developed, the Atlantic Ocean widened, and it found itself over here instead of over there. Somewhere between 1.5 and 3 billion years old, and it's pretty much what the whole of the Outer Hebrides are made of. But But when you do get to the end of this causeway, you can't help but notice that uniform geology doesn't mean uniform everything. Lewis and Harris, staunchly Protestant, but these last few islands, having somehow sidestepped the Scottish Reformation, are still overwhelmingly Catholic. Same almost unfarmable rock, though. And also the same, but just about farmable, sand. With enough rotting seaweed, the machair as it's called, might have given you half of a very hard living. The other half coming from what tweed you could weave, or what you could earn from the sea. An unremittingly hard and quite often dangerous way of life. In the face of which, what religion you were probably wasn't a terminal question. Soggy old soundscape today. There'll be a change of music up on top of that ridge, though. Whoa! My trousers just blew off my rucksack. Ah, got them. I'd be lost without those. No view. Never mind. About a couple of miles beyond those lakes down there, I should hit a roadhead. This is more like it. Southwest, back over there in the cloud. That dark extension to the right to the island of Eriskay, and this is Barra. This evening I'm going to nip over that ridge down to the capital, and tomorrow morning a 5-hour ferry ride back over to Oban on the mainland. Just got to find somewhere to doss down for the night while I wait. Quite nice being a passenger for a while. It's only about a week's walk back to Glasgow once I've got off, so I can just slump into a chair and spectate. Bit of a re-entry moment back there. Didn't know where I was for a minute. Anyway, I'm here now. Oban 10 miles behind, and Glasgow around 80 ahead. Lots of forestry and water in between. Agricultural zone light green, built up area in grey, and the hills and all the heathery bits are white. Here's the route I took out of Glasgow, crossing the River Forth at Stirling, and coming back I'm going to skirt round the top of Loch Orr, Loch Fyne, Loch Long, and round the bottom of Loch Lomond, and then follow the Forth and Clyde Canal pretty much right into Buchanan bus station. I always feel a little bit enchanted by granite. It's basically distilled magma. Less dense than basalt, so as it formed and accumulated in the early earth, it bobbed up, floating around like life rafts, and forms the core units of the continents today. Oh, sounds like some sort of distant human activity. Loch Fyne is just around the bend there. But once I've got to the trees down there, I'm heading up towards the white flash up on the hillside. 1950s hydro scheme by the look of it. Probably harvests a few of those streams and shoots them down into a powerhouse. Anyway, it stopped raining, so I'm having a bit of a dry out before I plod up there. I also need to fix this buckle. One of the things I generally carry a spare of. This is Ben Eam, from which you can see absolutely forever. Except not today. Or at least not the right part of today. It's getting on for 9 o'clock in the evening now, and Ben Eames, the white summit way behind me. Raven around somewhere. A little bit of sunshine left too. Loch Lomond ahead. Campsie Fells beyond that. I actually crossed that horizon a couple of months ago on my way north out of Glasgow. But tomorrow, probably the final day, and it should be downhill all the way to the Clyde. Oatmeal bicky in the grass. Nice. See if I can make it last till the end of this fence. Anything to slow things down, really. Final day. It's always a bit of a blur. Walk, 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 and then suddenly not. So I'm rather hoping that the canal will act as a sort of psychological shoehorn. I suppose a walk does leave you leaning at a slightly changed angle to life. Although, once it's over, the effect wears off pretty quickly. But on the other hand, the journey itself, the random joy of it all, often travels on a bit further.